In the old calendar, as you see, it is St. Dominic. He swap places with St. John Mary Vianney, and actually this year would be quite important in the history of St. John Mary Vianney. I believe it was the day in which he was ordained, not the day but the year in which he was ordained. That would be in the 1800s, so it corresponds to 2 or 3 centuries. But he is somebody to look to, as is St. Dominic, because they both had one thing in common, and it's what I'd like to zoom into for a few seconds because it concerns us all. It's the principle that they had, and it's called the mixed life, active contemplation, which the monks of old had in this land way back. They did not differentiate between, if you like, category A and category B. They did all, and in that they reproduced the whole Christ. Now, in practice, what both these saints did was this. They applied, possibly without knowing it, the principle that would come into print with Thomas Aquinas. Contemplari, to contemplate, et contemplata aliis, tradere, and the things contemplated to hand on to others. You look at a person who has been spending time in quiet adoration and meditation on the Word of God in the presence of the Blessed Sacrament, coming into mode of handing on, e.g. in preaching, with a person who is living on his reserve. And it's what's actually happening a lot. Not out of any fault of the people concerned, but by the very nature of pastoral life in our day. If one looks carefully at the private life of many a pastor, out of sheer generosity and answer to duty, there is very little time to take in gratuitously and to adore and be present to. Because there are so many demands that after a while they've got to recycle what they have inside them. Now there is a difference. The problem is this: if one spends one's whole time doing things for the Lord, then after a while, if one is not careful, one turns into a machine. And the element of encounter, of this contemplation which is at the origin, actually goes through the window. It applies to you. If you analyze your day, you need to see, in practice, over the year, what proportion was spent in that encounter. Because that's the element that gives sense to all the rest, and makes you also available to Him. Otherwise, you too are a machine, functioning well, performing professionally, but missing the encounter. There is one little secret I'd like to hand on to you, and it's what's common to these great mystics and saints, Dominic and St. John Mary Vianney, Grevach's typical examples. It's the fact that they are always serene in what they're doing. That is the litmus test. A person who is not serene is not in mode. He's functioning. He's not in encounter. The Lord is no longer in control of his soul and therefore his performance. He is. And when it comes to specific things for the Lord, that has consequences. One looks at things that don't work and one asks why. Well, look further back to the origin. Was the initiative human or divine? There is more. In our work for the Lord, if we are so keen on getting it to work, in inverted commas, that we jettison all the rest, and that happens, then even in the Lord's work we have missed the point. Because in the last resort we're not responsible for the result. We're responsible only for the present moment. And in that present moment, above all, is the encounter. It's the Lord's work. So whatever we're doing, it's important always to be in mode. The Dominicans, to this day actually, have a good blend. And it's interesting that in Ireland, it's one of the few orders actually doing quite well with regard to recruiting. It gives a structure which precisely limits the damage of losing control of time. They are called back all the time by the bell, back to base, back to base, back to base. Choir, mental prayer. Sung, the choir, well. And regularity of the day. Saint Jean-Mary Vianney had no such structure except what came from his own instinct. He maintained it well, and for that hardly slept at all, because prayer was always the same, whatever else was called upon him. What about yourselves? Look at the way the week passes. There are no bells, perhaps except the Angelus calling you back to base. So, like Crevas, you have to call yourself back. There has to be some discipline. And one easy way is to verify actually where does the free time go. Because your profession will demand certain timetables, but the free time is yours. Does it go into passive watching of a screen? If so, what is the quality of what is absorbed? Now remember, at the end of the week, those evenings will not come back. They are lived. And there is precisely the test, whether the desire is there to be in mode of contact and adventure. Because if the desire is not there, then also all the rest of the time will be functional, performing, and not being. And we have at the end of this Gospel this warning that it is at an hour when we do not expect that the Lord will come, and we are told with some insistence to watch. Watch. That means, right now, if it were the last day of my existence, am I ready right now? At the hour of dying in an accident, people suddenly see the whole of their life, and then they realize the state they're in. If that were to come to you on the way back tonight in an accident, what would you see before your mind's eye? And what would the Lord put on your heart to adjust? Remember, the path to hell is paved with perfect resolutions. The same can be said of purgatory. Tomorrow is made for that. That's what tomorrow was for. But tomorrow, my friends, sometimes never came. Indeed, tomorrow never was. And tomorrow is actually eternity. And then it's too late.